Welcome back. The title of this episode is Success is More Than Talent. I'm your host, Leroy Glover, and today we're diving into a game-changing truth. Success is more than talent. Think about the people who consistently win, whether in business, sports, or personal growth. It's not just raw talent that gets them there. It's their commitment, their focus, and their clear sense of purpose. You'll benefit from today's episode. You'll understand how to go beyond talent and create real success through effort, engagement, and purpose. Here's what we'll cover today. Number 1, why talent alone is never enough. Number 2, the power of full engagement. And number 3, how clarity of purpose separates winners from the rest. Let's get started. Let's start with point number 1. Why talent alone is never enough. We all know people with incredible natural abilities, athletes, musicians, entrepreneurs, who never quite reach their full potential. Why? Because talent, without effort and discipline, goes to waste. Perfect example, Michael Jordan had talent, but what made him the greatest wasn't just his skill. It was his relentless work ethic, his obsession with improvement, and his refusal to coast on talent alone. If success was only about talent, the most gifted people would always win. But that's not the case. The winners are the ones who put in the work. Here's a key takeaway for point number 1. Are you relying on your natural abilities, or are you pushing yourself beyond them? Here's an action step for point number 1. Identify an area where you've been relying on talent alone. This week, commit to structured improvement, whether through practice, learning, or mentorship. Let's move over to point number 2, the power of full engagement. Showing up fully means being all in, not half-hearted, not distracted, but completely present in what you're doing. Example? Imagine 2 employees at the same company. One does the bare minimum. The other is engaged, asks questions, takes initiative. Who do you think gets noticed? Who do you think grows? Who creates opportunity for themselves? The difference isn't skill, it's in engagement. The more you invest in what you do, the more you get in return. Here's a key takeaway for point number 2. Where in your life are you just going through the motions? What would happen if you showed up fully committed? Here's an action step for point number 2. Pick one area in your life, work, personal development, or relationships, and commit to full engagement this week. Track the difference in your results. Let's move into our last point, number 3. How clarity of purpose separates winners from the rest. Knowing why you're showing up changes everything. Perfect example, think of a marathon runner. The training is rough. The race is exhausting. But what keeps them going? Their why. Whether it's personal growth, competition, or proving something to themselves. Without purpose, effort feels like a burden. With purpose, it becomes fuel. Here's the key takeaways for point number 3. If you don't know why you're pursuing something, it's easy to quit when it gets hard. But if your vision is clear, you'll push through challenges and find ways to win. Here's an action step for point number 3. Define your why for a major goal in your life. Write it down. Say it out loud. and remind yourself daily. Here's this episode's key takeaway. Number 1, talent alone isn't enough. Effort and discipline matters more. Number 2, full engagement leads to real results. Show up fully in everything you do. And number 3, knowing your why keeps you going. Clarity of purpose fuels long-term success. Here's a quick suggestion. This week, be intentional. Show up fully, define your purpose, and watch how your results change. Thank you for tuning in today. If today's episode resonates with you, share it with someone who could benefit from it. I'm Leroy Glover, and I'll see you next time.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling something I think we all deal with. Those voices in our heads.
Absolutely.
You know, those inner voices that are constantly chatting away. Sometimes they're helpful. Right. Sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to figure out, are they guiding us? Are they distracting us?
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at a YouTube video for this one.
Okay, cool.
Called Perspective Shift. Are the voices in your head guiding you or distracting you?
Interesting.
It's from a channel called Useful Words.
Okay.
You ever heard of them?
I have, yeah. I've seen a couple of their videos.
Okay, cool.
They're pretty interesting.
Yeah, they have some good stuff.
Yeah.
And so today we're going to dive into this video and see what we can learn about, how to basically become the DJ of our own minds.
I love that analogy. I think that's a really good way to put it.
Because we have so much noise coming at us all the time.
Right.
From, external sources, but then also just our own thoughts and everything that's going on up here.
It's a lot.
Yeah. So how do we filter through that and choose what to focus on?
Exactly. And this video starts off by talking about this really interesting concept called selective attention.
Okay.
Which is basically the ability to decide what we give our attention to.
So it sounds like being mindful.
It is very much connected to mindfulness. Yeah. It's the idea that we have, we have a choice.
Yeah.
We don't have to pay attention to everything.
Right.
And in fact, we can't pay attention to everything.
Right.
It's just too much.
Yeah, there's too much going on.
So we have to be selective.
So I guess the question is then how do we actually do that?
Yeah.
How do we become more selective?
Well, the video gives a couple of really good tips on this, and one of them is becoming an intentional observer.
Okay, an intentional observer.
That sounds kind of complicated, but it's really not.
Yeah.
It's basically just being aware of what's going on in our minds.
Okay, so paying attention to the thoughts.
Yeah, like just noticing the thoughts that are coming up without judgment.
So not judging the thoughts, just noticing them.
Exactly, just observing them. And the video makes this really great analogy. It says, if you live on a busy street, you don't pay attention to every single car that drives by.
Right.
Right? You'd be overwhelmed if you did that.
You never get anything done.
Exactly. It just couldn't function.
So it's the same with our thoughts.
Right. We don't have to engage with every single thought that pops into our head.
Okay, so that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And I guess the key then is figuring out which thoughts to focus on.
Right, and how do we know which thoughts are, helping us and which thoughts are maybe not so helpful?
Right, and that's where this quote from the video comes in. I think it's so powerful. It says, "The thoughts we choose to engage with are not passive. They actively influence our actions and shape our reality."
That's such a good point.
Right.
Because it really highlights the fact that our thoughts aren't just these fleeting things that come and go.
Right.
They actually have an impact on our lives.
Yeah, they shape our reality.
They do.
Because our thoughts lead to our actions.
Exactly.
And our actions create our reality.
Right. And the video gives this example of fostering kindness.
Okay.
So if we're constantly thinking about
being kind
and helpful, then we're more likely to actually act in kind ways.
Right. Because we're looking for opportunity.
Exactly. We're primed to see those opportunities.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
So basically what we're saying is if we want to change our reality, we need to start by changing our thoughts.
Yeah, and this is where the idea of intentional living comes in.
Okay, so intentional living.
Which is all about making conscious choices.
Yeah.
About how we want to live our lives.
So instead of just reacting to things,
Exactly.
we're actually being proactive
Right.
and making choices that are aligned with our values.
Yeah, and that's where selective attention comes back in.
Okay.
Because if we're not choosing our thoughts, then we're basically just reacting to whatever thoughts pop into our heads.
Right.
Which means we're not really in control of our lives.
So we're basically living on autopilot.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. And the video gives a really good example of this in terms of like professional growth.
Okay.
So let's say you want to, move up in your career,
Right.
but you're constantly thinking, I'm not good enough, or I'll never get there.
Those thoughts are not going to help.
Right. Those are definitely
Yeah.
not the thoughts you want to be focusing on.
Yeah.
But if you can shift your focus to,
Right.
I'm learning and growing and I'm capable of achieving great things,
Yeah.
that's going to change your actions.
Right.
And ultimately, it's going to change your results. Okay, so it's like the difference between,
Yeah.
stumbling through life on autopilot.
Versus like charting your own course.
Yeah.
And being the captain of your ship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for anyone listening who's ready to, take the wheel,
Yeah.
what would be your advice to them?
Well, first of all, I would say,
Yeah.
be patient with yourself. This is a process.
Yeah, it's not going to happen overnight.
It's not a quick fix.
Yeah.
But I would say start by just noticing your thoughts.
Okay.
Become aware of what's going on in your mind.
So kind of like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, just that intentional observer, just noticing without judgment.
Okay.
And then once you start to become aware of your thought patterns, you can start to gently redirect them,
Okay.
towards thoughts that are more helpful.
So it's not about silencing the negative thoughts.
No,
It's about choosing which ones to focus on.
exactly.
Okay, I like that.
And the more you practice this,
Yeah.
the easier it will become.
So it's like a muscle.
It's like a mental muscle
Okay, cool.
that you can strengthen over time.
Well, I think that's a great takeaway for today's deep dive.
Yeah,
We really do have more control over our thoughts
we do.
and therefore our reality than we often realize.
It's an empowering thought
It is.
when you really think about it.
We're not just victims of circumstance. We
Yeah.
can actually choose
Absolutely.
to create the life that we want.
Yeah, it all starts with our thoughts.
So there you have it, folks. Another deep dive complete.
Thanks for joining us.
Remember, you are the DJ of your own mind.
Choose your tracks wisely.
And until next time, happy thinking.
Take care.